Over 2,000 years ago, when practically everyone else was explaining the world through myths, angry gods, and magical forces, one guy decided to try something that was frankly unthinkable at the time. He stepped up and tried to explain our world using actual science. His name was Posidonius. And the crazy thing is, he wasn't just a geographer, or just an astronomer, or just a philosopher. He was literally all of them rolled into one. And as we're going to see in our explainer today, he tried to figure out the entire Earth as one massive, interconnected system. So, you gotta wonder, how exactly does someone pull that off? I mean, think about it. No satellites, zero telescopes, no GPS, absolutely no modern climate data. And yet, this one incredible thinker managed to decode some of the most complex systems on our planet, everything from ocean tides to the literal circumference of the globe, using nothing but his mind and his own two eyes. Let's dive right in and see how he achieved the totally impossible. To really get his genius, we have to look at where it all started. He was born around 135 BCE in Apamea, Syria, which was this super busy, cultured city. And young Posidonius was basically that kid who never stopped asking why. Now, the totally normal thing back then was to look at a thunderstorm and say, well, the gods are angry. But Posidonius, he completely rejected that whole mythological status quo. He demanded actual observation. He wanted evidence, measurement, and a rational explanation for things. And honestly, that revolutionary attitude became the foundation for literally everything else he did. Eventually, he ends up studying under Posidonius, who was a massive deal in Stoic philosophy at the time. And Stoicism is all about how the universe follows natural laws, right? Posidonius absorbed that, but he realized something really important. Just reading books and debating in comfortable rooms wasn't going to cut it. If he really wanted to understand the Earth, he had to get out there and experience it. He firmly believed that, at the end of the day, the Earth itself is the greatest teacher. And man, did he get out there. The sheer scale of his travels is staggering. We're talking Greece, Italy, Spain, Gaul, North Africa. Remember, sea travel back then was no joke. It was terrifying. Constant threats of pirates, disease, brutal shipwrecks. But he deliberately chose to rough it by ship, horse, and foot across these wild coastal regions. He chose storms over the comfort of a library because he wanted to pioneer what we would call field geography today. His time up in Gaul is a perfect example of his absolute obsession with the truth. See, writers down in the Mediterranean had this terrible habit of sitting in their cozy cities and just labeling all northern tribes, like the Celts, as barbarians. But Posidonius wasn't having any of that. Instead of repeating those lazy stereotypes, he actually traveled up there and lived with them. He acted like an early anthropologist, carefully documenting their political structures, their rituals, their farming. He always let first-hand observation completely override prejudice. Let's jump into our first main topic here, the night of the star Canopus, and measuring the Earth without instruments. So one night near the island of Rhodes, he's looking up at the sky and he notices something weird. The bright southern star, Canopus, appeared at different heights depending on exactly where he was standing on the Earth. And boom, light bulb moment. He realizes the Earth's curve is actively changing the angle of the stars. So by mathematically measuring the angle difference of this one star between Rhodes and Alexandria, and then taking the physical distance between those two cities, he actually used sheer geometry to estimate the entire circumference of the planet. Mind-blowing, right? Now, to be fair, his final number wasn't perfect. He actually underestimated the true size of the Earth, but it was still a massive, staggering leap forward for ancient science. And here's why this is so wild for our modern history. That specific miscalculation rippled through the centuries. Christopher Columbus actually read geographical texts that were based on Posidonius's math. It's what gave Columbus the totally false confidence that Asia was just a quick, easy sail right across the Atlantic. Moving right along to the next part of our explainer, the Atlantic Ocean shock and decoding the tides. So Posidonius travels way out west to the Atlantic coast of Spain, and he runs into something that absolutely floors him. He was used to the Mediterranean, which is pretty calm, right? Very mild tides. But out on the Atlantic, the tides were monstrous. The water would surge in, violently rip back out, and surge in again. Locals were blaming sea monsters and gods, of course, but Posidonius, he asks this radical, brilliant question. Could the moon be controlling the sea? He sat down and just obsessively tracked the timing of the tides against the phases of the moon, and he totally nailed it.
He correctly figured out that the moon absolutely influences the sea. It's a massive triumph. Over 2 millennia before we mapped out modern gravitational physics, this guy had basically decoded the mechanics of the tides using nothing but his eyes and his intellect.
And he didn't stop at the shoreline. He started looking at how the environment affects us. He noticed hotter temperatures in the south, freezing cold in the north, and realized that human lifestyles completely change depending on that climate. This sparked a totally groundbreaking concept called environmental determinism. He argued that your climate directly dictates how your civilization behaves and develops. Now, sure, modern science has critiqued this as being a bit oversimplified, but for the ancient world, this was literally the birth of studying how humans interact with their environment. So, tracking his life's journey, after decades of living with Celts, measuring stars, and decoding ocean storms, he decides it's time to bring it all together. He officially transitions out of his wild travel era and enters his teaching era. He settles down to turn his crazy, worldly experiences into a teaching career, eventually passing away around 51 BCE as one of the most famous, respected intellectuals alive. He actually set up shop on the island of Rhodes, turning it into this unbelievable intellectual laboratory. Just picture walking into this place, massive hand-drawn maps everywhere, early globes, sailors literally walking off the docks to give him reports on distant coastlines, and philosophers just fiercely debating the laws of nature. It was so elite that even the famous Roman orator Cicero came to study there, and then went on to spread Posidonius' ideas all over the Roman Empire. If you really want to grasp how far ahead of his time he was, just look at how his work translates today. He practically invented the branches of modern geography 20 centuries early. Studying tribes? That's human geography. Tracking winds and storms instead of blaming Zeus? That's climatology. Decoding tides is oceanography. And looking at how geography impacts empires? That's the dawn of geopolitical geography. It's all right there. Which brings us to his absolute biggest lightbulb moment. His ultimate legacy wasn't just doing the math on the globe or figuring out the tides. It was this revolutionary realization that the climate, the stars, the oceans, the trade routes, they aren't separate things. They are all beautifully and perfectly connected parts of one giant universal system. Nature and humanity are totally tied together. The guy refused to accept the myths everyone else swallowed. He charged out into the unknown, looked up at the stars, and turned geography from a bunch of campfire stories into a real, rigorous science. So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this to think about. If one guy could figure out the mechanics of the Earth 2,000 years ago with zero technology, just using his rational mind, what massive connected systems are sitting right in front of us today, just waiting to be understood? Thanks for joining me to explore the incredible life of Posidonius. Keep asking questions and keep observing the world around you.